Peter Mandelson, Lord Mandelson, has been arrested by detectives investigating claims that he committed misconduct in public office during his friendship with the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Now, of course, the former Prince Andrew, he was arrested for the self-same offence last Thursday. Some fairly dramatic pictures of Peter Mandelson being led out of his house by the Metropolitan Police. Now, they've been investigating the alleged leaking by Mandelson of Downing Street emails and market-sensitive information to Jeffrey Epstein many, many years ago. So let's get the latest from Helen Hodinott, LBC's reporter, who joins us live from New Scotland Yard. Was this expected today, Helen?
Well, Iain, the investigation into Lord Mandelson was opened earlier this month and 2 of his properties were searched at that point. And then that's led us to today, this quite extraordinary footage showing the moment he was arrested at his home in Camden. He was wearing a grey jumper and black jacket, being led away by plainclothes officers from his home, looking, unsurprisingly, extremely stern. He then got into the rear seat of an unmarked Ford Focus police car before it was driven away. And the Met has released a statement saying officers have arrested a 72-year-old man on suspicion of misconduct in public office. He was arrested at an address in Camden and has been taken to a London police station for interview. It says this follows search warrants at 2 addresses in the Wiltshire and Camden areas. Now, as I say, those searches being referred to were carried out on the 6th of February. The Met had launched an investigation into the ex-Labour minister earlier that week after allegations he had passed on market-sensitive government information to Jeffrey Epstein. The most recent release of the Epstein files included email exchanges which appear to show Lord Mandelson was in close contact with Epstein during a period in which Mandelson was at the heart of government during the financial crisis, including appearing at one point to discuss Treasury plans for a one-off tax on bankers' bonuses with Epstein. Lord Mandelson has previously denied any wrongdoing. He'll now be being questioned by police at a London police station. They can hold him for up to 24 hours from the moment that he arrives at the station, and where this evening he will be processed in the same way that any suspect would be. He has not been charged with a crime, but the crime of misconduct in public office is a serious offence. It can carry a lengthy jail sentence. And of course, you spoke then of the déjà vu. This all might sound familiar, as it does come just 4 days after Andrew Mountbatten Windsor was arrested on suspicion of the same offence, of which he has also previously denied any wrongdoing.
So what happens now, Helen? He'll obviously be questioned by the police. I think Andrew Mountbatten Windsor was released within a relatively short time. They didn't use up the full 24 hours. But Peter Mandelson is unlikely to be charged immediately. He may not be charged at all, of course.
Yeah, and the way that the police have carried out this investigation into Lord Mandelson is a bit different to the one they carried out into Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, who was arrested on the moment that they then started to search his properties. In Lord Mandelson's case, the police searched his properties and now have come to a point where they have arrested him. Of course, the information that they gather from him, from his questioning this evening, will all add to the case that they have if they found any evidence they might think of as relevant to this case in those searches of his home. I was outside his home in Camden when some of those searches were going on, a lot of pulling boxes in and out of that house, so they will have been through his belongings with a fine-tooth comb. And this is all about building a picture on top of, what was presented in the Epstein files, those communications between Lord Mandelson and Epstein, which seem to paint a much broader picture of their relationship. So the officers will now be collating all of these various parts of evidence, working with the CPS and figuring out if it warrants a charge or if that will come further down the line.
Just watching the pictures of Peter Mandelson being marched out of his home in Camden into this white Ford Focus police car. Of course, TV cameras were there, which they weren't for the arrest of Prince Andrew. Now, some people say, well, the police must have tipped off the media. I think that's unlikely here, isn't it? Because I suspect TV cameras will have been stationed outside Mandelson's home ever since Prince Andrew was arrested.
Well, that's right. As soon as those searches started to be carried out, there was a media frenzy outside the homes. So the eyes would have been on those front doors of his home anyway, rather than the arrest of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, which took everyone pretty much by surprise, including, of course, Andrew himself. So it was a different process. They'll have their reasons, the police, for carrying things out in a different way. But the end goal with all of this is just to gather these various parts of evidence and then figure out what they're going to do with that information. Yeah, if it does point to any wrongdoing, which of course both parties have previously denied.
Helen, thank you. That's Helen Hodinott talking to us from New Scotland Yard. Well, of course, the last thing that the Prime Minister will have wanted today is for this to overshadow what I think has been a relatively successful announcement on special needs education by the Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson. Well, Natasha Clark is our political editor. She joins me live now. Natasha, what are the political consequences of this? Because, of course, Lord Mandelson hasn't been charged with anything. He's been arrested on suspicion of misconduct in public office. But in a sense, that's bad enough, isn't it?
Yeah, good evening, Ian. And you're right, the fallout from this whole sorry saga is still continuing for Sir Keir Starmer. He was the one that appointed him as the US ambassador back in 2024 when he first became Prime Minister. And at the time, it's fair that we weren't talking too much about the links that there were between him and the former late financier Jeffrey Epstein at the time. But there were lots of people saying that this was still a big political risk for Sir Keir Starmer to take. At the time, it was sort of seen that he would be able to smooth relationships with the new US Trump administration, and that he was, his schmoozing, his time in the EU and his time as a senior politician working across all walks of life, including government and out. It was seen that he would be that person that would help smooth over that relationship and help Keir Starmer and Donald Trump, who it's fair to say are not natural political allies, to have a good working relationship. And obviously that relationship has now come back to bite Sir Keir Starmer, and obviously it's not looking good for him to have these images of Lord Mandelson being arrested splashed all over our news screens. And obviously Keir Starmer trying to get on his feet again after a very bruising few weeks here in Westminster, and exactly what has been happening with all of the furore around MPs who have many of whom have said that Keir Starmer should be resigning over this scandal, including the Scottish Labour leader Anna Sarwar, who said that he should go over this, and many private MPs privately thought that he should. He has survived the moment of maximum danger, I think, on this front. But it's fair to say it's still embarrassing. This is still the man that he appointed as the US ambassador. And we are still waiting for the government to release those long promised documents that they said that they would release about Lord Mandelson's appointment as US ambassador. The Metropolitan Police had asked the government not to do so because they didn't want to prejudice the investigation. However, I am told that the arrest of Lord Mandelson and the investigation into him is specifically looking at his time at the moment as business secretary, so 2008 to 2010. It's not at the moment, as far as I understand, looking wider at his sort of appointment as US ambassador, but still Sir Keir Starmer, obviously previously the DPP and such a legal background, doesn't want to risk prejudicing this investigation into Lord Mandelson any further. So yes, of course, it's still embarrassing. I don't think anybody in Westminster was expecting this today, and you are right, of course, it has slightly overshadowed the government's big announcement on SEND, special educational needs, where they were really hoping that reform of the system would be all we were talking about. It's fair to say we have been talking about it all day until this point. But yes, Sir Keir Starmer, I'm sure, will be upset that there won't be more airtime on this issue. It's not going to go away. However, Darren Jones, the Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister, has said that those documents, or at least the first tranche of them, won't be published until at least March. so we have some time to wait before we can really see what the paper trail was like between Sir Keir Starmer and Lord Mandelson, and whether Lord Mandelson in fact lied about what he knew about his links to Jeffrey Epstein at the time of his appointment. But like I say, as far as I understand it, this is a completely separate to the police investigation into Lord Mandelson, which is looking at his time as business secretary and whether the alleged sharing of emails, sensitive documents, sensitive public information at the time that Gordon Brown was Prime Minister. So these two things very much running in parallel. And then, of course, the arrest of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, of course, similarly feeding a separate parallel sort of reaction as well in royal circles and in the palace.
It is possible to argue that this whole, well, I'm going to call it a scandal because in many ways it is a scandal. Whatever the result of this arrest is, whether Peter Mandelson is charged or not, this is going to hang over this government for many months, possibly even years to come, isn't it? I mean, let's say he is charged and it goes to court. The court case probably wouldn't happen until 2027 or possibly even 2028. So we're going to be talking about this I think, for a hell of a long time, which would be the last thing that Keir Starmer and Labour strategists want.
That's right. And this is a very serious offence, as you were just hearing from our reporter Helen Hodinott in the last few minutes. She was saying how misconduct in public office can have a potential life sentence attached to it. It's incredibly serious. And obviously it doesn't happen very much in our politics where we see anybody really charged with misconduct in public office. It's usually an offence that we see police officers charged with, but it's generally not very well used at all for politicians. So it is a bit of uncharted territory, both for Lord Mandelson and, of course, for Andrew Mountbatten Windsor and the investigation that the police are doing into those two men who, we should say again, deny any criminality and they deny any wrongdoing in these cases. But you are completely right. If indeed either of them are charged in this case, it will, of course, drag out for a lot longer. And I think it just goes back to questions about Sir Keir Starmer's judgment. Although the political moment of maximum danger may have been passed for now, he is obviously facing a load of minefields possibly coming up. We've got obviously that by-election coming up quite soon. We've also got the May elections where Keir Starmer is going to face some difficulties there. And obviously MPs, they may have shut up for now, but there are still many who are really disgruntled behind the scenes. This SEND announcement, which you'll be talking about later in your show, obviously at the moment MPs are supportive of, but I will wait to see about whether they have any thoughts about that in the future, about whether they will actually pass it. They're not meant to do so until 2029, Iain.
Natasha, thank you very much indeed.